Let's get one thing straight right from the jump. A man bit the head off a bat. Not in a movie, not in a cartoon, but on a stage, in front of thousands of screaming people. It's the kind of sentence that makes you stop and reread it, just to make sure your brain processed it correctly. Yes, a man. A bat. A bite. This wasn't some metaphorical biting the bullet situation. This was a literal teeth-to-flesh what is happening right now moment in rock and roll history. The man, of course, was Ozzy Osbourne, the legendary Prince of Darkness. The place was the Veterans Memorial Auditorium in Des Moines, Iowa, and the date was January 20th, 1982, a night that would become permanently tattooed onto the skin of popular culture, all thanks to one very, very unfortunate flying mammal. Picture the scene. The air is thick with the smell of cheap beer, hairspray, youthful rebellion. The music is a thunderous wall of sound, a sonic assault that makes your ribcage vibrate. On stage is Ozzy, the maestro of mayhem, a figure who had already built a career on being unpredictable, on pushing the boundaries of what a performance could be. He was the guy your parents warned you about, the living embodiment of heavy metal's theatrical chaos. So when something was thrown onto the stage, it wasn't entirely unusual. Fans threw things all the time. Roses, t-shirts, occasionally undergarments. But this time it wasn't a rose. It was a bat, and what happened next would eclipse every power chord and drum solo of the night. Ozzy, caught in the delirious energy of the show, saw the small, dark object lying on the stage floor. In the heat of the moment, blinded by stage lights and fueled by adrenaline, he made a decision that would define his public persona for decades to come. He picked it up, and assuming it was a rubber toy, a common prank at his shows, he put it in his mouth and chomped down. The immediate, shocking crunch, the subsequent taste of warm blood, were the first indicators that this was no factory-made prop. The crowd roared, some in shock, some in euphoric disbelief. They had just witnessed the most Ozzy Osbourne thing that had ever happened, an act so wild it felt like a myth being born in real time. This single bizarre act instantly became the stuff of legend. It wasn't just a story told by the people who were there, it exploded into a global phenomenon. News outlets that wouldn't touch a metal show suddenly couldn't get enough. It was the perfect headline. Shocking, a little bit gross, and centered on a celebrity already seen as a wild man. So how exactly does a situation escalate to the point where a bat and a rock star have a very unfortunate, one-sided dental encounter? Let's break it down, because the sequence of events is simpler and more chaotic than the myths suggest. The Diary of a Madman tour was in full swing. Ozzy's stage show was designed to be an over-the-top spectacle. He was known for throwing raw meat into the audience, a gimmick that encouraged fans to throw things back. It was messy, interactive, slightly unhinged. The stage was often littered with all sorts of strange tributes from the crowd, including, on previous occasions, rubber bats and other toy animals. On that fateful night in Iowa, a 17-year-old fan named Mark Neal decided to participate in the tradition. According to his account years later, the bat he brought was a small, already deceased animal that he had found. He put it in a bag and brought it to the concert. During the show, he tossed it onto the stage, likely hoping for a quick laugh, a moment of acknowledgement from his idol. From Ozzy's perspective under the spotlights, the small, motionless creature looked exactly like the dozens of rubber toys he'd seen before. In his autobiography, he claims he had zero idea it was a real animal. His immediate thought was that it was a particularly well-made prop. So, in a spontaneous act of showmanship, he decided to give the crowd a memorable moment. He picked it up and, without a second thought, bit its head. The immediate and gruesome realization, bones, blood, sent a wave of shock through his own system, even as the crowd's roar intensified. The aftermath was a scramble of backstage panic. The bat, for the record, did not survive the encounter, though whether it was alive when bitten remains a point of contention. The more pressing concern became Ozzy's health. As soon as he was off stage, the reality set in. He had just put a wild animal in his mouth. A wild animal that is famously a primary carrier of rabies. The tour paused as Ozzy was rushed to the nearest hospital. Once the initial shock wore off, the story moved from the concert hall to the hospital. This is where the legend gets its dose of medical drama. The primary concern was rabies, a viral disease nearly 100% fatal if untreated. Doctors at Broadlawns Medical Center in Des Moines weren't used to treating rock stars for bat injuries, but they knew the protocol. Ozzy began a series of painful post-exposure prophylaxis shots. Not a single quick injection, but a grueling regimen, including shots administered directly into the abdomen, notoriously painful at the time. Ozzy described the experience with dark humor and genuine horror. He said the treatment was far more agonizing than the bite itself, from godlike adrenaline to being held down for excruciating injections. A humbling experience. Ozzy Osbourne worrying about a deadly virus after on-stage insanity, like a superhero whose weakness is a tetanus shot. The press had a field day. Headlines practically wrote themselves. Ozzy's rabid bite. Batman gets rabies shots. The narrative blended the grotesque with the absurd. It solidified his image as not just wild, but genuinely out of control. Performance and reality completely blurred. Some reports exaggerated, painting him foaming at the mouth. Others treated it as a joke, a punchline in rock and roll excess. The truth was in between, a serious medical situation born from reckless showmanship. This didn't happen in a vacuum. Early 80s metal was all about theatricality and shock. Alice Cooper had mock guillotines and live snakes. The bat incident took that tradition to a new, unplanned level. The story of the bat bites spread like wildfire, not just through rock magazines, but across mainstream media. In a pre-internet era, an event had to be truly monumental or bizarre. And this one had all the ingredients. It was simple to understand, visually shocking, and involved a celebrity known for outrageous behavior. From New York to London, it ran everywhere. TV anchors introduced millions to the man now known as the guy who bit a bat. The caricature flattened nuance, the rubber toy assumption, the fans' role, the immediate regret, and the painful medical consequences. A moral panic followed. Some painted Ozzy as a devil-worshipping lunatic who promoted animal cruelty. The controversy only made him more popular with his target audience. Over time, Ozzy learned to play into it. While insisting it was an accident, he understood its power as a marketing tool. The bat became an unofficial mascot. The story became less about what happened and more about the myth, one that both Ozzy and the media helped create. Let's not forget the other key player, the fan who threw the bat. For years anonymous, Mark Neal eventually came forward. His account adds a crucial human context. He wasn't malicious, just a kid trying to be part of the show. He and friends found a bat they believed was dead or stunned and decided it would be the ultimate offering. In that era, shows were participatory. Throwing something on stage was a way to connect, to get noticed, to leave your mark. There were no legal consequences for Neal, but the role followed him. The incident becomes less about one man's madness, more about a collective moment of chaos. Amidst all the sensational headlines and public outcry, a quiet and rather touching detail often gets lost. A week or so after the incident, as Ozzy was recovering from rabies shots, an Iowa rescue that had custody of the remains held a small, informal memorial for the animal. Not as a joke, but to highlight animal welfare and counterbalance the narrative of excess with a moment of respect. Ozzy later expressed regret beyond the inconvenience of shots. He said repeatedly he loves animals and feels terrible about what happened. He has explained that, had he known for even a fraction of a second that it was real, he never would have touched it. The memorial and his remorse puncture the myth, revealing the uncomfortable truth beneath the spectacle. Even in chaotic pop culture moments, there are quieter voices for compassion and responsibility. So, here we are, decades later, still talking about a man, a bat, a bite. Why does this story endure? It's more than a shocking anecdote. It's about fame, responsibility, and the blurry line between image and reality. It encapsulates an era when spectacle was as important as sound, rock theatricality pushed to an untoppable extreme. The lesson is about consequences. A split-second choice triggered a medical ordeal, a global media frenzy, condemnation, and a persona he could never escape. It shows how a single unscripted moment can be magnified until it overshadows classic albums and iconic songs. Notoriety and reduction. Building a brand on chaos means the chaos can take on a life of its own.